thanks to Ohad as well for allowing us to speak here today. And thank you to you all for staying with us that long. And I hope the pizza was okay. And I hope you enjoyed a few. My name is Juergen. My official title is a solution engineer. Now, if I talk to my mother, it's really hard for me to explain what that actually means, right? So I don't put it anywhere. I'm a technical person, so I answer all the technical questions around our Lithium community platform. So just for your understanding, I also, unlike our European partner manager Andreas, or unlike our sales guys, I do not hand out business cards, because that means people will come back to me and ask me technical questions. So if you want to get in touch with me, it's really easy to do it. You take any portion of my first name and any portion of my last name or a portion of my company name, you arrange it and you try to contact me. It's really easy. So if you have a question around Lithium, please do get in touch with me. But I will not send out push messages to you and try to sell you something, okay? I hope that's good news. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background of what I actually do so that you can put things into perspective. And then I will show a lot of examples of what we do for customers. It will be at the end anyway. So if you don't get a picture now, it's also at the end. So to give you a little bit of background of what I do, it's at the end, I promise. And you can download the presentation. I have a link at the end. I worked for Oracle. I started with Oracle back in 2002. And as it happens to be, I have some connections to Israel, because when I was fed up with Oracle, I joined Mercury Interactive, which some of you might know. Unfortunately, I only had a contract with them for like 2 months, because then HP bought Mercury. And it was a little bit difficult, because I joined Mercury because I wanted to I wanted to work for a small company. So that didn't really work out. Back in those days, Oracle was like 60,000 people. HP was like 200,000 people. That was before the EDS acquisition, when they bumped over 300,000 employees. So, okay, I looked at HP and Mercury for a couple of years. Back in 2011, I decided, okay, 2011, now I will try again with a small company. I joined Right Now, which some of you might know. It's also a software as a service company, and they, unfortunately, like 3 months after I joined, got acquired by Oracle. So
when someone hires you, it means the merger is
yeah, the biggest, that's a very good observation. The biggest challenge for me is that usually if you think about stock options and stuff like that, there is a period you have to be with the company before you can exercise any kind of stock options. So I always got screwed. So now, Lithium is my next try. Outside of Lithium, I live, as you might be able to tell, I live in Berlin, in Germany. These are my 2 children. They are about to start being social as well, as you can tell. It's not always that nice, but at least from time to time. And I heard Keren ask before who has children in here. At least that's what I understood. So let's start with the big question that I think we have not really talked about today. What actually is social media? And as always, if you have no clue, just ask children. And hopefully they will be able to...
What is social media anyway? It's an easy way to communicate. I don't know a ton, but social media is communication. Playtime for big kids and grown-ups. You can talk by Skype or internet or Facebook, Twitter. People show what they like and about trips and stuff like that. If they have a pet, you can see their pet. It doesn't cost any money. Adults usually post pictures and stuff. You could talk about things on there that you want to talk about and see what other people are doing. Be social without being social. That's kind of the way now for people to know what's going on. They can just go on Facebook or go on Twitter and say, blah, 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 blah. Facebook? It's kind of a website where people go and chat with their friends. Teenagers, I think email's too slow for them. At that point of your life, you have the most friends and you know the most people, and you just want to get it out to the world. When I get older, I want to be friends with everyone on Facebook. I want to be friends with everyone.
So there was a question before how do you talk to people that don't understand the impact of social? You can use that video if you want. You can also talk about how children nowadays grow up and what that actually means with regards to interaction, with regards to how we interact with simple things like media. Like, my son with 2 years, he was able to unlock my phone, right? Now when he's watching his TV show in the evening, I don't know if there's an equivalent here in the region, when he has to pee in between, he puts the TV show on pause, goes peeing, comes back, and every night he wants to rewatch it again. In my past, that was not possible. Like, I had to switch on the TV, you had to be there at a specific time. If you did miss that, it was gone. So the whole media is changing, and it's actually not at the tipping point, because I can tell you, like, you see the source of this picture, this is myself. There's more stuff coming, and we cannot actually understand what's coming. And I don't know, is anyone here who tried Google Glass? But I guess you all heard about it. There's a lot of, like I'm living in Germany, there's a lot of controversy around data privacy, data protection. I completely understand that this is all fine, but technology is changing the way we interact, and is changing our lifestyle quite incredibly. And so I was in Barcelona, and a colleague of mine was part of the Google Explorer program. And funnily enough, Google is also one of our customers. So we power the Google Glass community. It's a private community at the moment, so we cannot really look at it. But there are some things that change the whole way of interaction. Like, imagine you can order some food in the local language without having to pull out the phone or look something up. So there's much more stuff coming. And I think that's the best way that we can address the question, why should we care about social? There is no way around it. It's about being in business in 10 years or maybe in 5 years, and not around, do we have to care about it? Okay, is the person who asked the question still in? I don't remember who it was. So I hope that helps a little bit, because we have to address that question a lot. Does that make sense?
To me it does. The question is, does it make sense to him?
Well, I would ask a question, do you care about your customers? And do you care about the consumers in 2 years or in 4 years' time? And if he's nodding, then it's no longer that big point of a discussion. Now, we talked about what we do, and we talked about some of the brands we serve as a company. The big question is, why do they work with us, and what is the reason for thinking about a community deployment? And Andreas covered a lot of that, and I promised to focus more on some real-life examples. But just to reiterate one point, people trust each other, and they don't trust companies that much. So unfortunately, now I'm here representing our company. So if I look around, only like 10-14% of you trust what I'm saying. So I will try to introduce some customer statements and testimonials later on, so that you get a higher level of trust. Now, I was asked to talk about implementation approaches with regards to social business solutions. And I want to put that in a broader context and not actually limited to Lithium. So most of what I'm talking about is fairly generic, and I hope that is helpful for you. So when we talk about deploying a social media strategy, there are some touch points that we usually have to think about. There are some internal touch points, internal systems like a CRM system or business intelligence system. And there are some external systems like a .com page that we heard Andreas talk about a lot, that gets less important in terms of interaction, because all the people go to Facebook, Twitter, or somewhere else. A lot of customers also think about ads and search engine impact, so this is also something to keep in mind. So when we talk to prospects and when we try to define a strategy that we can support from a technical perspective, it's very important to understand what they actually want, what they have in mind, and also put a bit of common sense in what actually makes sense and what is possible, and also what is possible in a specific amount of time. Now, of course, we are a technology vendor, so we do have a technology slide. You can see it's complex. It's not as complex as like an SAP slide or an Oracle slide. But we have some components that Andreas talked about. They basically define interaction styles, like how do I ask a question How do I actually participate in a contest? How can people rate what I'm doing? How can I identify experts that later on maybe are the only people that can write a review for a product because they have proven that they know the product or know the service or own it or have produced a lot of content around it. And then we have integrations in, I would say, more traditional IT systems. Some of them are a little bit limited when it comes to handling social media interactions. Like when I talk to customers, a lot of them have problems with, for example, bringing in data that comes from Facebook or trying to get something into their CRM system. So this is where we as a platform vendor can help. But there's one thing to keep in mind. Does anyone know what this is? Close. It's not the 747. It's the cockpit of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. So do not overcomplicate things, because a lot of customers that I visit, they have broad visions of what they want to integrate and how the interaction style around social media shall feed into their analytics or CRM systems or backend ERP. This is all great, but they usually have a hard time allowing a customer to change an address or something. So, and if that's the case, it might be helpful to tell them not to focus on the broad integration story, but to focus on the little things that can be done immediately. And we have a lot of customers who deploy brand communities and large-scale brand communities without integrating anything. And it works because we actually are at the forefront, and we don't have to provide any account manager complete insight in the whole list of questions that somebody asked in the community, because he will not be able to use it anyway. So we can do it, but keep in mind, starting simple is a very good thing to think about whenever you think about a social strategy. If you don't start simple, you end up with a more traditional, like 12-month implementation timeline with some phases around that. Now, our projects usually are implemented and live in around 3 months. Of course, we have some, content around it, what we actually do in those phases. And it's important to keep in mind that we are a SaaS vendor, but we only start working after we have a signature from a customer. But around 85–90% of our community projects are implemented in less than 3 months. And that's something to keep in mind. That is not possible if we build massive backend integrations. But again, it's not required, and it usually is not required at the beginning.
Do you go live with your content in there?
So the question is, do you go live with content or without? When we deploy a community, we always have a ramp-up phase. And during that ramp-up phase, usually a community is in a closed or semi-closed state. And in there, you try to invite your super fans, if you already have them out there. You try to invite them and help you build the community structure and help to build initial content, because it's not very charming. It's like, when I'm traveling to Tel Aviv and I'm walking around in the evening, I would not go in a really empty bar, because that's not really inviting. There might be a reason why it's empty. So you should always think about having some valuable content before you actually open up a community to the outside world. But we do provide some best practices and guidance around how to do that. So now let's take you on a journey to some customers, if you want. Real life examples, no more PowerPoint. Is that okay? Or you have to tell me if you want to have more PowerPoint, then we can certainly accommodate that. Now, first example. This is where, depending on the customer and depending on the business, this is where I would say roughly half of all customer interactions start. People searching something on Google. Okay, unfortunately they don't start on your website, or they usually even don't start on Facebook, because on Facebook they check what their friends are doing, on what kind of naughty pictures they're posting, but they don't search, at least at the moment, they don't search for a brand. They might search for feedback on usage or on products in the future, and there's more to come, but at the moment this is reality. Most of the stuff starts with Google. So to give you a real life example, free search engine optimization. Best waterproof eyeliner for the ladies in here, and let me just go to, okay, yeah. I have to search on google.com, otherwise the page rank doesn't really work. So if you search for best workout eyeliner in the US, the first search result is actually a community post on the community. And if you're a little bit open to it, and if you take a look at your next 10 days Google searches, you will realize that a lot of the stuff you search for will actually result in some kind of a community response. Unfortunately, it's not always like a Lithium community customer, but a lot of things you search for will result in peer or crowd peer-to-peer produced content. The reason for that is that Google ranks content that is created by people fairly high, and it makes a lot of sense because it's usually much more trustworthy than what brands are putting out. And when they're trying to, some 5 or 10 years ago, we had those big link farms where people were cross-linking to get traffic, but that doesn't work anymore. Now, if we have a look at that specific type of interaction, I will make that a little bit bigger. There is someone asking about a good workout eyeliner. I don't really understand why this is a complex question, but I learned from my female colleagues that this is really complex. So, and you can talk about that quite a lot. And just to give you some community components that actually help driving vibrancy and interactions, these are really simple things. This is not like, we don't have to give out money for people to join in a conversation there. We do simple things like, we see who's talking about this question. People can give hearts or likes or whatever. You can define how you want to call it. You can, if we look at a specific profile of one of the users, and she wrote, I have to go back. She wrote quite a massive response here. I love working, give some feedback on products. And now let's check, is that person trustworthy? Well, she has a lot of friends. Friends are fairly difficult to fake in any kind of social network. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the big challenges with faking reviews. You always have to create accounts to do the faking, and then they get sorted out. So having friends, having a lot of likes, hearts, whatever you call it, that's a good indication. You can tell she's quite addicted to beauty products because she defined her top 10 beauty product list. She posted pictures, and you can see a kind of activity stream. All that is, of course, depending on your business model. So whatever you want to do or whatever you want to show is completely up to you. I'm just trying to give you some examples to make it a little bit more.
It's not too much. It's
not too much, but it works. So let me go back one step. So I know it's hard to read, but there are like 30,000 posts in one of those categories, 80,000. At the moment, there are 350 users active in that community, which is a fairly specific community, beauty talk, and then it's hosted by Sephora. So of course, it's not that difficult to understand that they are at some point in time trying to sell, but it's really easy. You don't have to make it overly complex. You know what? You got a free USB stick. Don't tell Israeli border control that I smuggled the 3 USB sticks in and I don't take them back home. It's 4 gigabyte. So whoever makes a good comment might win one of the other 2. So does that make sense so far? So let's have a look at another example. And we are coming back to something Andreas mentioned earlier on at the end of his speech when he talked about you have to put up a specific reason. You have to, if you have, I made that statement on the rooftop 10 minutes ago. Sony is putting a specific theme on top of their community. Share your experience. That works well for their photo products, for example. But you have to think about the theme, and you have to realize if you have shitty products or shitty services, or if you try to fool your customers and try to take money out of their pocket for stuff that's not worth it, it might not be the best idea to implement a community or a place where people can engage. So that only works if you at least have the feeling that what you're doing is good, right? And customers value that. And if you do that, and if you define a theme, and the theme can be something around, you know, helping customers helping each other, or sharing your experience, or talk about beauty, then you have something that you can construct a community around. So let's have a quick look at what Sony's doing. It's really straightforward. It's not that difficult. They expose people who get a lot of likes. This is very simplistic, like this pat on the back. Yeah, I feel good. This is the concept of, we call that type of component, we call that a leaderboard. You can put a leaderboard wherever you want, like in one specific area, a leaderboard for the people who know the most about Sony Bravia TVs or something like that. And it makes them feel more valued and trusted, right? And it also helps other people to understand who's responding to their question, and letting them see that this is someone who actually has a sense of what he's talking about. And then we have things like recent posts, or here Sony, of course, because it's about sharing your experience. It's about photos that people can upload. And of course there are big sites, there's Flickr or something, but that doesn't matter. If somebody comes to Sony, wants to share his experience with Sony users and not with people who discuss what the best camera brand is, that's the place to go. This is the kind of thinking you have to have in mind. Okay? Yes, please.
My question is, if you, we go from the situation that you know your product is good, but you always have some bad reviews.
Always.
Always, yeah? So is it better if there's a single bad review, is it better to delete it, or to answer in a sophisticated way?
Never delete.
Yes,
if
never
it's a single
delete.
one, like I would say, you know, you delete it and it's gone.
Well, usually, so the good thing about a community deployment, if it's done properly, you don't have to delete it, because your superfans will defend you before you can actually delete it. It is very difficult to try to put strong moderation or censorship around community, because people will, if their posting was deleted once, next time they will take a screenshot and post that you've deleted it. So you should always exercise extreme caution. Yeah. So.
The politician,
and I have.
politicians in Israel.
Yeah. So it's not. I would say at least the Lithium community deployment is not a good technical or it's not a good solution for dictatorships or something, because it might lead them into the wrong direction. We try to advocate open and transparent communication, and you know, no matter what type of industry I'm speaking to, I always get that kind of question. Like a month ago or so, I was with a large German car manufacturer, and they said, you know what, I don't want to I don't want to implement a community, because people will always complain about the new cars are too expensive, the build-to-order options are far too expensive, and you know, once they bought a car, they will complain about the bad service that they received from the car dealer when they brought it in for service. And like 10 minutes later, we identified that for each of those steps, there's a great community potential. Like, just if you look at the car dealers, they have a great interest in understanding which of their official dealers is providing bad service, because then they can work with that dealership to improve the service. But at the moment, they have a hard time getting that kind of information. So never delete, and build a community that allows for transparent communication. That's the generic rule. I will show more examples. You can ask as many questions as you want, but just with regards to showing more, yes.
I saw it's also in the Safera, but also here. The domain is community.sony, community.safera. I know from both
SEO punish.
personally and
Yeah.
from my experience that a lot of the times, even before getting the page, just seeing the domain, they will leave.
Usually the problem is the problem is the other way around. So here we have a specific domain structure that's community.company.com. We also support, from a technical perspective, a primary domain path. So it would be sony.com/community. It's possible from a technical perspective. The thing you're mentioning is usually that Google is punishing subdomains in their standard page ranking, but they're not punishing us. So people don't even get to the result. But you can do it. You can do it both ways.
But it's one side of it, and the other side of it is the droppage. Because
Yeah.
a lot of the times when you're
You can do it both ways. It's possible. We support global domain path.
I would like to hear the whole answer because I don't know the.
It's an implementation question. So he was asking, why did Sony go for community.sony. Whatever and not sony.com/community?
No, that wasn't my question actually. So it's a good thing she asked, because I was just asking. You are running a community that's called Community Sony. It doesn't matter if it's Sony Community or
Yeah.
Community Sony, but it's already branded in the name. If you want to build a community to talk about beauty, it's okay. It's okay for it to be.
Yes, you can have-
sponsored
yes.
I'm just asking, why should the name of the company be in the domain?
It's completely up to you.
Because you pay for it.
It's
But
it's
not always
completely
a good thing.
it's completely up to you. But that's more. I would say that's more a question around the interaction that you're trying to have. We have some independent communities that are actually provided by some companies in the backend, but they just feature like the theme that they're that they've been implemented around. So it's completely up to you. You can do whatever you want. Does that make sense? It's up to the client. We implement whatever they tell us. So just to give you a couple more. Oh, sorry.
Just back to my question, previous session, you can relate to the question I asked before.
Can you repeat the question?
About the super user, how you get them, how you motivate them to work with you.
Give me 3 more examples, and then we'll come to that. So another example, just to put things into perspective around what can you do with communities. Oh, sorry, we don't need that transit. We have replaced a very old community deployment at eBay recently, and we are literally at the moment rolling out the global community structure. I think we have like 7 or 8 countries at the moment where we do provide the community, and you can see it's fairly straightforward. Type a question, recent topics, they feature new solutions. That's it. Seller support, whatever you want to call it.
And the people answering here are eBay representatives or fans?
No, usually it's fans. Usually in the ramp-up phase, you have to put some moderation in place. So if something does not get answered for a specific amount of time, you can handle it on your own. But if you do it too early, or if you do it always, then the community launch will be, prolonged. So, but we provide guidance around that.
What happens if a fan gives a wrong or even bad answer?
You don't have to care too much about it because the community will solve that. And it's a very different type of interaction. If you imagine a client asks you as a company and you give out a wrong answer, they hate you forever. They will tell all their friends about the shitty answer they've received. But if they receive an answer from someone in their peer group, they will say, hey, that didn't work, or that didn't solve my problem. Does anyone have another solution? That's the big difference when we talk about peer-to-peer communication. Okay, so this is usually only you have to look at it a little bit during the launch phase, but once the community has reached a certain critical mass, it's sorted on its own. Next example, Skype. I just mentioned that outside to someone. So Skype has a very specific use case. Skype has like 250 billion customers who are using their services. They have a hard time supporting anyone who might have a problem or a question or a technical issue. In the Skype community, you will find a lot of examples around, bad communication. They rip me off. They charge me for Skype credits, and and you will see a lot of examples where non-Skype employees defend Skype and tell them, hey, you know what? You don't have to use their services. Go call your friends in the foreign country and pay a tremendous amount of telephone bills or something like that. So all that is only possible on a community backend, and it's not like you can moderate that away or you can remove it. That doesn't make sense. You just have to have a platform that allows people to help you with finding the best answer and best solution. Yes, please.
Do you know what Skype is doing with all this knowledge, comments, and
yeah.
What is it doing internally?
So the question is, what is Skype doing with all that information that is pretty much generated internally? Skype has published a couple of interesting facts from our perspective. Like, for example, they can measure, and I think Andreas had that, or maybe not. They can measure that community members have a higher probability to actually purchase a premium plan, and they also have a higher probability to stay as a customer. Like, the churn rate goes down as soon as somebody engages in the community. They also have some statistics around how many cases they are handling. So it depends on the customer how much of association they do with their data. But they look at churn rate and
teams that are looking at it, marketing, support.
It depends on the customer. I will show you a customer testimonial video at the end, and we will have an example for that. Community can also work for highly regulated markets. This is a see. So the world is small. This is a Commonwealth Bank in Australia. So your client. A pretty new community deployment. So the good thing about community is if you allow customers to talk to each other, you usually, in most cases, you don't have to worry about regulations, because it's not you telling, or giving advice on investment strategies where you create huge liability issues, but people talking to each other. And that's like, I'm talking to you, hey, I have a big gambling problem. How should I get out of? So you can give me an advice, but if you ask your bank, they cannot respond to you on any kind of social channel or whatever. It's just think about it. Community also can work in highly regulated markets. Not so much in dictatorships maybe, but highly regulated markets, finance, insurance, governmental, like when you're issuing new passports or something and people have a lot of questions around, or can help each other. These are perfect use cases for community deployments. Yes, please.
That's interesting, because especially in Australia, where I'm from originally, people really hate the bank.
Yes.
Like, the hatred is there.
It's global. That's a global phenomenon.
What Commonwealth Bank, and I've noticed they've got a new entrepreneurial hub as well, and I don't know if you did that. What they're doing is finding a completely new way of engaging customers through this platform. It's fantastic.
We only support their support community, but that is part of a global social media engagement plan where we kind of contribute. One of the other components is also whatever you do, make it available mobile, because that's where customers will engage with you. If they're not doing it today, they will do it in 2 years' time. So even my mother is able to use an iPad. She never got used to a laptop or to a computer, but iPad works. So think about mobile, and this is all live. Like you can hopefully tell, this is not PowerPoint, so this is all live. Whatever we do also works on mobile. Oops, that was the wrong one. So maybe the last example for today, and then I will hand off to our last speaker. Google AdWords, because it's a good use case. It's a B2B community, because Google AdWords by definition is about, how do I place my ads? And just to coming back to the point, what do you have to do, or how difficult is it to get people engaged? I had a look at, so B2B community, by the way, and this is for the English AdWords community, and even Google does not use a different domains.
Google is using your platform instead of their platform from Google?
Yes, they even have a social network, but still they do the Google AdWords community is based on Lithium, and well, you can tell if you look at the domain. So everything you see here is Google.
By the way, it's different because they don't say Google AdWords
Yes.
community, and if I'm getting to the AdWords community, I'm looking to the subject of AdWords,
Yes.
which is different.
Yeah, fair point. But good thing is they can tweak the page rank anyway, so people will always end up there. So you can see a couple of users are surfing there. And now, so what they are doing, like similar concept, they have, you cannot read it back there, I will read it for you, the top starred members of the week. So their ranking mechanism, pat on the back, they call it a star. And now I had a look at, yeah, somebody's mentioning Moshe already. So I had a look at Moshe. So we have a look at his profile. Now you can collect badges. This is a very simple way of rewarding people. Like in this case, let's just hover over one. He was one of the most active top contributors of 2012. Great badge. Cost to Google to give that badge? 0, right? But he feels great. So does it all make sense now? Please give me some yeah, okay. And now we can of course look at his website and what we're doing here. And funnily enough, he's based in Israel Institute of Technology. So if somebody knows him, greetings. I used him for our small demonstration. So of course there's also some benefit in being active in a community because he is trying to attract, I would say, clients or some people that he can sell consulting services around Google AdWords to. So, you know, your community will in many cases also be a hub for creating additional businesses, and maybe not for you, but for some of the people who are contributing. So this can be one of their incentives and motivations. Does that tie together now? Yeah.
You give a little bit, but okay.
It's really simple. You have to do. You don't.
You give him just the rank.
You give him a rank. We even have customers who have like a top program or ace program, or you can think about any kind of name for it, and they even say our top member of the year will not get money. He will get a rank in the community, or he will get access rights to a specific area in the community.
What can he do with the resources?
Don't worry about that question. It's not about. You have to. You should not think about what you would want or what you would expect. It's about the main thing. And Keren told us, read Dan Ariely's book. It's about motivation. It's not about putting a monetary value to kind of interaction. People want to feel good and they want to get recognized. And we are trying to put up a platform that allows for easy reputation giving right at the beginning. Like when somebody enters and he maybe just makes a comment, you can reward him. You can give him a rank, make him a new contributor or something. So it's as simple as that. And I just want to...
Maybe from Google, it would be nice to get a rank from Google, but if I'm a newbie website,
No.
and I give ranks,
It's usually even easier if you're not Google, because if you're a food company, you can
anyone.
get him to see the first cornflakes edition
Yeah.
before everybody. But and it sounds simple, but yeah, you make a whole show of it, and you invite him, and he's the only one. It's just him and the community and the PR. He will feel great about it. There's so many ways to make somebody feel wanted, and social is better than monetary.
So we might hire him soon, but you will nevertheless get a USB. You have to hand it over.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So last thing for today, and then our last presentation is up for today. Just some, because the 14% trust still is an issue for me. So. of course, I have to give you the story behind that. We found that video just by chance. Back in February was the first anniversary of the English Google AdWords community, and one of our colleagues stumbled upon that video. We did not pay Google. They did that on their own because they were so happy with the community results after 1 year after relaunching it. They tried to do it on their own before, but they failed because of the simple things like motivating people. Yes, and that was what I tried to present you today. And I'm up for any questions, but in terms of timing, I would suggest I hand over to our last speaker for today. And thank you very much.
Thank you.